Howdy, folks. Howdy. I'm Black Dragon, and welcome to Black Dragon Biker TV. And as always, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in from wherever it is in the world that you happen to be. What's going on here? Interesting. Oh, my goodness. It's a Monday morning, huh? How do I... Wow. Interesting. Wow. Something incredible has happened here. My screen has been taken over. Oh, boy. This is definitely a Monday. Ah! Here I am. All right. Oh, Monday morning lives. You guys know I hate lives. The only reason I do live is for you guys. I'm Black Dragon. Welcome to Black Dragon Biker TV. And as always, I'd like to thank you all for tuning in from wherever it is in the world that you happen to be. We've got an incredible guest on today. And we're going to be talking about something that every one of you guys in a motorcycle club probably should be doing. And we're going to be talking about some 501(c) hacks or 501 nonprofit hacks. Let's do it like that. So you guys should like, share, and subscribe to all of your friends. You should share this one. If you got a motorcycle club, a guy asked me, he says, what's the best way to make things happen with your MC? What's the best way to financially structure your MC? And since so many motorcycle clubs are doing charity work out there, and you're not getting any profit from, you're not being seen, and so many motorcycle clubs are set up in so many different kinds of ways. There are some financial implications to the way you set up your club, especially if you set it up as a nonprofit. And then there are some good ways to do a nonprofit, and then there are some better ways to do a nonprofit. So what we're going to do this morning is talk about it, and let's bring on our guest, Attorney Matthew Nolan. What's up, man?
Doing well. How are you?
You're from the Trautmann Martin Law firm out there in Minneapolis. Is that correct?
That's correct. Yep.
Well, I'm glad that you've taken some time to educate my viewers. So without any further ado, let's get into it. It's going to be a busy morning.
Yes, it is. All right. Thank you for having me back. The last time I was here, we talked about 501(c)(7, and basically from the very, very beginnings of the motorcycle club up until the point where it might be a good idea to seek a tax-exempt status. Most people are familiar with 501(c)(3). I think a lot of MCs are 501(c)(3) in error because that is limited to charitable purposes only, whereas what the MCs are doing are social and recreational or fraternal. So just to quickly review what Black Dragon's been saying, you get your group together, you get known in the MC community, you talk to the COC or the dominant 1%er MC, you get blessed in, you have your 5 people for the 5 officer positions, and then you're a motorcycle club. Now, at the point at which you start renting property, it would be a great idea to start thinking about being some kind of limited liability entity, if for no other reason, for premises liability, which is like a slip and fall in the clubhouse. At that point, enough money is coming in, you can afford these type of things, you should consider this as an option. Now, at the point that you are considering buying a clubhouse, or you've reached the point where the amount of money you have profit, basically, as you pull your money, there's stuff left over. This is when you're going to want to become a tax exempt entity. Otherwise, you're supposed to pay taxes on that money, which is a crazy thing to do. Yep.
So, first of all, you sound like you've been studying us. Are you in a motorcycle club?
No, I've been studying you closely.
You got all the pieces down, my man. So at the point that we have money accumulated, where we would have
Exceeding
to
your costs.
exceeding what yeah, okay, profit.
Yep.
So at that point, we should consider becoming a nonprofit,
A tax exempt entity, I would call it.
a tax exempt entity.
Yes.
Okay, and you're going to tell us why.
Yes, because you're technically supposed to then pay income tax on that money that you've put together. So a 501c7 is what we talked about the last time. That was what the IRS calls a social club.
Right.
And you have to maintain, like, you cannot have more than 35% of your income be from non-member sources. So
Right.
so member income includes members and their guests. So that's good news. But
Mm-hmm.
your investment income is limited to 35%. And of that 35%, only 15% can come from non-members. Now, a lot of clubs are in a much better position than that, and they can be a different kind of an entity, a 501c10, which we'll talk about near the end of this program. But if you've done those things, you have all your people, you've got your officer positions, you're an MC blessed in your area, and the money you have exceeds your costs. And your civilians, you should be thinking about being a 501c7. The downside being more paperwork, and you have to maintain that 65% of income has to be from members and their guests, and then 35% has to be from someone else. So if you do lots of parties, a lot of your income comes from non-members, then a C7 is going to be a difficult choice to make. Now, if you've reached that point and you're all veterans,
Mm-hmm.
there's no question about it. You should be a 501c19.
Hmm. I've
That is,
never heard of that before. C19.
yeah, it's the best. It's probably the most generous tax exempt status that the IRS offers. And the only thing you do basically, instead of asking the question, is this going to exceed our 65-35% split? You just ask the question, are 97.5% of our members veterans or not? And that includes the reserves, the National Guard, the Coast Guard. It includes students at military academies and in ROTC.
So you call it a 501
C19.
501c19.
Yeah.
Wow. Never heard of it.
If you're an all veteran club, it's just without question, 501c19 is the way to go. And I want to just give you a couple of, let me just check my notes here real quick. You have to be organized in the US. So it does become a little bit complicated when if you're a C19 veterans MC and one of your chapters is in a different country, but we can address that if it comes up.
Mm-hmm.
75% of the members must be past or present members of the US Armed Forces. But the IRS permits you to have like spouses and lineal descendants. So I'm not going to talk about that because I know the MCs don't really do that. So for the MC purposes, 97.5% have to be veterans, former or current members of the US Armed Forces. If you have 97.5% of your membership as veterans, you can do all of the following things. I'll just read them out. Promote the social welfare of the community, like
Mm-hmm.
buying book bags and stuff, which is stuff that MCs already want to do. Assist disabled and needy war veterans, which I'm sure they're all doing. Provide entertainment care and assistance to hospitalized veterans. Carry on programs to perpetuate the memory of deceased veterans and comfort their survivors. Also something that all of the MCs are doing.
Mm-hmm.
You can you can sponsor or participate in activities of a patriotic nature, which you can read that to include any number of rides. Provide this is the one of the this is not going to be a part of every veteran MC, but the fact that it is possible is pretty substantial. You can provide insurance benefits to members and or their dependents. So if you have a very big veterans MC, you can actually have like a pooled insurance policy
Mm-hmm.
that provides death benefits or whatever. Normally, that would be its own separate tax exempt status called 501c8. And you can do social recreational activities for the members, like operate a bar or restaurant, do gambling, do dinners, dances, and parties. And
Gambling.
if
Okay.
you, if you, well, it has to be legal. The IRS won't take your tax exempt status away if you're doing illegal gambling, but they insist that you report your illegal gambling income. So you need to figure out how to do gambling before you do it because
I love it. Okay. Well,
so basically what I'm saying is it combines all the benefits of the C7 without the restrictions of the 65-35 distinction.
okay.
You can provide insurance to your members. And if you segregate the money into its own account, you can also give tax deductible contributions.
Hmm.
So that's what's good about a C3 is someone can give you money and then you can give them a tax deduction.
Right.
If you're 97.5% veterans, you can do all the writing you want. And then if you segregate the money for a charitable purpose only, you can give your donors a tax deduction. So you have all the benefits of the C3 combined with the C7 and the C8 all together. 501c19 is the like top tax exempt status, I would say, for those reasons.
But you have
So
to be 95%, did you say, or 75?
97.5% veterans.
Okay.
Now, if you're all war veterans, which apparently includes anyone who served in the military since like August 2nd of 1990, then you can actually give tax deductible contribution. You can give a tax deduction to people who contribute if your organization is primarily for a camaraderie ship purpose. So I'm not if it might be I'm not sure if the listeners are following here. Generally speaking, the MCs, you pull your money, you do your thing. You say the word donor, but you don't actually get to give people a tax deduction. With a 501c19, you can give them a tax deduction if they're contributing to your segregated fund, if the segregated fund is for a charitable purpose, or if you're 90% or more war veterans, you can give them a tax deduction for a contribution for a camaraderie ship purpose. So
So anybody that's helping out your club financially gets to deduct that from their taxes.
if you are doing your C19 for primarily a camaraderie ship purpose, which may or may not include every social purpose, but the fact that it's even possible is really, really an enormous thing.
So if you got a club of military guys that have been serving since 1990 or so, because we've probably been in a war, engaged in war since about 1990 to the present,
Yep,
you have military war vets.
correct.
And if you're made up of 97.5% military war vets,
No, 90% war
no,
veterans.
90% war vets, then uh, the charitable deductions that they give you don't necessarily have to be for your segregated fund for helping out people. It can be for your fund for your camaraderie fund, just helping your club out in general. So you guys getting together and going on rides or whatever, the community can help that by donating tax deductible donations to your MC. Am I tracking?
That's about right. Yeah, it's have to change a little bit some things about how the MC is handled, but the IRS does say that that is possible if the organization is primarily for a camaraderie ship purpose, which I would think would include many many MCs.
Yes.
Um, and let's just address this thing. So that's already really good. Okay. But there's even more, right? Because you don't have to worry about the 65-35% distinction.
Hmm.
You could, as a C19, have interests in other people's business. So, what we talked about during the C7 episode was corporate sponsorships. So, a lot of the clubs, have the related business. They probably pay the employees. The employees use the employees pay tax on that. Then they use some of that money to pay club dues.
Mm-hmm.
Then the club should be paying tax on that or is a tax exempt entity. If you have this business just paying the club a corporate sponsorship, then the business can get a tax deduction because it's an expense.
Mm-hmm.
That's cool. But the C19 scenario, you have something you could actually have an interest. C19 could be 10% shareholder in such and such towing company or whatever, because there's no limit to how much non-member income can come in.
Right.
So that's really something important.
Mm-hmm. It's huge.
Yeah,
One of my listeners says that's huge. I say that's huge.
it is
It's
huge. Yeah.
I didn't
Because
know.
that's really
Yeah.
the way the MCs want to act, right? The MCs, they say words like we're doing fundraising, but
Mm-hmm.
what's really happening is they're fundraising for somebody else's C3. In this
Mm-hmm.
scenario, you can do fundraising and raise the funds for your own segregated fund and
And
give
do charitable work that's actually being paid for, helped and sponsored by the community.
exactly. And the people who help and sponsor that segregated fund, they can get a tax deduction. Like saw the story you did about the book bags. That'd be a perfect example. The It's all wrapped up in one MC. The MC does it. That would be it's really, really good. If you're all vets, the answer is 501c19. It's just a spectacular situation to be in.
Now, how do you prove this membership?
I'm sure all the veterans do. Isn't it called? What's it called? A DD 214?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think that almost all the vet clubs insist that they see that, and that's going to be more than sufficient.
Uh-huh. Now, do you have to show that to the to how do you prove your membership? Like, do they ever say, okay, let us see all the DD-214s
If they
or
audited you, I think they could ask for proof that you were all veterans, and if you're giving people tax deductible tax deductions, then they might want to see that you're all war veterans.
Mhm.
So you have to have that information. But my experience has been, and I'm sure you agree, all of the veterans MCs make sure that the people who are their members were veterans, were honorably discharged,
Right.
and
Absolutely.
get their paperwork. They know the paperwork far better than I do. So that is pretty much not going to be an issue. But that means if you go back and rewatch the C7 episode, we talk so much about what is member income versus what is not member income and how to carefully balance this. That all just goes away. As long as
Mhm.
you're 97.5% vets, you have a broad range of things you can do, and it's great. Now, if you have reached that same point and you have
Mhm.
and part of a veterans organization and someone else has their own 501c19 and someone else is a 501c3 in error, or you're a civilian club and you're a C7 and the other chapter is a for profit, and you want to try and get these things all together and have some consistency, you can do what's called a group exemption letter.
Mm.
So now not every MC has to file its own application.
You mean every chapter?
Yes, correct. Not every chapter has to file its own application. So what you do in that scenario is you pick a chapter that's the central organization, and that chapter does its application and gets its 501c19 status.
So we would probably call that the mother chapter.
You call it the mother chapter. That could be a C19, it could be a
Mhm.
C7, it could be a C10, it could be anything. So if you're all vets and there's multiple chapters that are C19s and some that aren't, you can all go under one group exemption letter. If you have a bunch of C7s because you're a civilian club, you can go under a group exemption letter. And if you're a C10, which we'll talk about at the near the end, you can also go under a group exemption letter. So if you're a really big club, yep,
So so what I have seen is a lot of clubs when we get started, we don't particularly know how we're going to
right,
do anything.
right.
And so I have seen where you might have a chapter over here that got its C7 together, a chapter over there that has its C7. This chapter hasn't done anything yet. The mother chapter may have its C10.
Right.
The mother chapter could pull all these chapters together under one group exemption letter and now there's a force to be reckoned with there.
Right. Yep. And you'd have to transfer. You'd have to get the C7s to. They have to match. All be C7s or all be C10s or whatever. In the previous episode, I misspoke and I said that the Blue Knights were C7. They actually were a C7, but for some length of time they've been a C10. So
Hmm.
all of the chapters are a C10 and they're under one group exemption letter. So there's the mother chapter holding the C19 tax exempt status, and then a million other chapters underneath,
Oh yeah,
all under the same group exemption letter.
yeah. They've got about close to 20,000 members
Yeah,
worldwide. Yeah.
they're big. And you can do something similar with your C7 you or your C19. You could be a bunch of C19s all under one group exemption letter. You could be a bunch of C7s under one group exemption letter. You could be a bunch of C10s all under one group exemption letter. So that just saves each chapter from having to file its own application. So in the long run, it would save money. Much cheaper to do it that way than it would for every single one of those chapters to do their own application. Now, the downside is you have to be comfortable with there being like a head chapter or a mother
Hmm.
chapter.
Well, all, yeah. That's that's our protocol. We all have a mother chapter.
Okay, because I've brought it up with people and I said, I did a C7 for their MC and there's several other chapters. And I said, you could be under one group exemption letter. You just have to understand that the IRS refers to the mother chapter as the parent and all of the other chapters as the subordinates.
Yes.
And they told me, nope,
Well,
we're
that
never going to get over that. The MC, the other chapters are never going to accept that. They're going to have to do their own application, which is a fine way to handle it. But
that
you have to,
that's not typical.
okay.
Typical is that the mother chapter runs it all anyway.
Yeah, this were like a smaller club with very independent chapters, but
Of
all under
course.
the same colors.
Yes.
And the idea that one of those chapters would be the head of the other chapters was a no go. It was like, that is
That's
never happening.
that's so interesting to me, because typically, the way we see it, the mother chapter or the national chapter, or there is a central body or
Mhm.
a ruling body that lords down its information to the rest of the masses, and nobody likes that, but that's the way it is.
In this scenario, I've now that been on and I've done this for a few clubs, frequently, you can tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, that mother chapter doesn't really exist anywhere. It's sort of just a loose collection of regional presidents or similarly elected officials kind of making decisions. Is that correct?
In some instances, but no. So it just depends on the way the clubs are set up. But most of the time, the mother chapter does exist. It is somewhere. Now,
Okay.
some mother chapters are not in charge anymore.
Okay.
And then that would be the national, and those would be, you might have a national president in Texas and a national vice president in Miami, and in that case, you're right. They don't exist as a chapter. They're really leaders from wherever they might be. But in some motorcycle clubs, only the mother chapter can run the nation. It's the mother chapter and the national chapter, and those people do exist in one spot somewhere.
What I've proposed to several clubs is they incorporate that group. They call it whatever it is, Black Sabbath MC National Incorporated, and that's the mother chapter or that's the national.
Hmm.
And then that's the thing that gets its C19 status or its C7 status.
That's kind of how we're set up anyway.
Right.
Okay.
So that would be the way I would handle it. So if you're in one of these clubs and you're listening and the national doesn't have its own thing, isn't its own entity, I would propose we create the national entity, we get the tax exempt status through it, and then we add the chapters as necessary. Now, the parent chapter or the parent or the central organization, it needs to have rules that are followed by all of the other chapters, and it needs to make sure that the other chapters are active and that they're doing their tax compliance. So that could be great. I rewatched our C7 episode, and when we were talking about this matter, I saw one of the comments pop up, and the guy said one of the happiest days of his life is when they elected somebody else's treasurer. So, like, if you are in that scenario and there's enough of you, you could pull your money and just have the parent do taxes for all of the chapters.
Mm.
I know it was a happy day in my life when I could afford for someone else to do my taxes for me.
Hmm.
So if you can all get together and do that, you can like kind of get those economies of scale going and have the national have to put up with that stuff, pay an
That's a
accountant
happy day in anybody's life when they
or
can have someone else do their taxes. That means you're making money.
right. Let me just go through this here.
Okay.
So check my notes really briefly.
Hmm. So if you
It's
guys,
not bad. It's not bad if everyone has to do their own application. I mean, that's just could be the way it is. Everyone is fiercely independent, and you just have to do in your own application. That's okay. It's also okay if you have a really big club and you want to experiment. It's probably it's going to be hard to just like get all the clubs in line. I don't think that was true of anyone. As far as I can tell, for example, the Blue Knights, they were C7, they were uh, it was a mess. At one point, it was a mess, and then everyone got into line, and they're all under one group exemption letter, and that's where you want to be. Now, let me talk about the C10 a little bit because I've had calls about this, and this is also a very good one. So, the C10 is something to think about doing when you're not veterans. When you're veterans, there's no question what you should do. C19. And if
hmm
there's a lot of you, your C19 is a group exemption letter. If
hmm
you're civilians, and you have more than one chapter and you can handle the top down structure of a mother chapter or a grand lodge and you're all under the same constitution and you have that level of organization, then you can be a C10. A 501c10 is called a fraternal organization. So like the Shriners, the Masons,
hmm
these are 501c10s. Now this could fit for certain MCs. The ones that it definitely fits for, no questions, are anyone who's like a government employee. I've had calls from people who are an MC for a labor union. That could be a 501c10 because they all share the same avocation or job. Firemen. I've had calls about fireman MC, also 501c10. Good choice. Law enforcement MCs, those are 501c10s as well. Now, in order to be a 501c10, you have to operate under the lodge system, is what the IRS calls it.
hmm
So you have the parent, and then you have that's or the group what they call the Grand Lodge, or we could call it the mother chapter. It doesn't matter what you call it, as long as that is the central organization. If you have a national, I would propose you turn the national into its own entity, and then pursue the tax exempt status that you want everyone to have through it. And there needs to be two. Excuse me. You need to have two. You need to have one parent and one child to get started with a 501c10. So you can't do it alone. There has to be
hmm
more than one chapter. There has to be one that acts as a central. Now, you don't have to have the central first. You can have all of the 501c10s or C7s be mixed up and then decide, okay, C10 is the right choice for us. And then the children can create the parent or the parent can create the children. So you can make it work. Even if it starts out somewhat disorganized, you can make it work.
hmm
Um, it can be huge. Now, the difference between the C19 and the C10 is that the C10 can never get tax deductible contributions for a camaraderie ship purpose, and they can't do insurance, but they can do everything else. And it can be a big money making thing. I mean, the Shriners own hospitals,
Mm.
right? Like they're not short on cash if you're having ship interests in hospitals. So the 501c10 could conceivably help capitalize member and be a 1% shareholder, a 2% shareholder in someone's towing company, someone's housing company, someone's whatever. The amount of money you can make in that scenario is really limitless because as long as you're spending all of it for the C10 brotherhood purpose. So the possibilities are like you can make real money in the C10.
Wow. Wow.
You could have a C10 that owns a trucking company or part of a trucking company. And as long as the money that's coming into the C10 is used only for exclusively for the brotherhood purpose of the C10, then it maintains its tax exempt status.
But you can have people that are getting salaries,
You could
right?
have people getting salaries. You could just have the money coming in and being used for a C10 brotherhood purpose. But the important part is that like you just don't have to pay attention anymore to the 65-35% distinction. I'm working on a C10 that's not an MC, and they're going to be probably licensing their intellectual property to other businesses, and that money that comes in is going to be used for it's going to be used for a C10 purpose. So like I got called by a very big club recently,
Mhm.
and they were going to start experimenting with C7.
Mhm. And you
And
said,
I think it's a fine idea, but if we move forward with the project, I might kind of say we should experiment maybe with a C10 purpose, because any big club in that situation, I know this to be true of this particular group. There
mhm.
are many businesses connected with the various chapters.
Right.
If you have it set up so that there's an ownership interest or a licensing or any number of things, I'm becoming straight E10 in its tax exempt form.
Wow.
So I think I think of some of the listeners who are in big clubs. Help me if you think I'm wrong. Are you seeing the possibilities here?
I'm seeing the possibility.
Okay, all right.
Yeah, I
Because
it's crazy. And I get a lot of clubs ask me a lot of times, like, how do we make money as an MC? What are the best ways to, we talk so many times about uh, how to get a club started, and we talk about those things all the time, but we don't always talk about things like taxes, insurance, burial insurance, the real stuff that people should be thinking about. We don't often talk about that. And we don't often talk about things like this, like how do you become a tax exempt entity, as you call it? We don't even call it the right thing. We call it nonprofit. So how do you become a tax exempt entity? And then what are the strategies behind it? This I think is just amazing information. And then yeah, absolutely, I can see. I'm sure my folks can see that this could be huge, a huge opportunity to grow the MC, finance the MC, and the MC could conceivably wind up financing you.
yeah, totally possible because you can get paid like whatever your market rate would be in that similar situation. You could get paid to do that work for the MC. To have a secretary who actually does secretarial work or a bookkeeper who does the bookkeeping. If you can get to that point, you really got something there. Because I know this one that they have many, many business interests, and many of the club brothers are doing, all the things that they would normally do. You know, there are towing companies, there are trucking companies, there are bars and restaurants, and um, the possibilities. Like I'm sure some of that money from the companies is being used to finance the MC, either in a non-tax compliant way or in a way that results in the tax liability being paid that we can just skip. So that's going to be for a limited number of MCs, but for those MCs that it fits, it's a really big deal. Big MCs can take advantage in a huge way.
So who sets this up for you? Your attorney or your accountant?
I would be your attorney and I would set it up for you. I would handle the application process, and then also we would continue to talk about compliance and perform the group exemption letter and write laws necessary to show to the IRS so that we accomplish the getting the tax exempt status in a reasonably fast manner, and then adding the groups, adding the chapters to the group exemption letters, and like writing the policies that go downhill for them to follow. So I do the application process, I do the tax compliance, and I do the intellectual property, because these clubs should be registering their MC colors and names as federal trademarks. And I can handle that for you. It's a really, really good idea. Black Dragon knows all about that. It's a problem
It's a,
if
it
you
can,
don't.
yes, God, it is a problem. Can you do this can Trautmann Martin Law do this for places that are not in Minnesota?
Absolutely. Because this is federal, we can do it for anybody
Okay.
in any
Okay.
state. And I want to just bring up another thing for people to think about here. Um, well, one of the things is I'm starting to realize how important gambling is to creating this fraternal purpose or this brotherly feeling. That's a difficult nut to crack, but being a tax exempt entity in many states permits you to have like a very limited license for doing raffles and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
So your ability to get that is also a big money maker for you. And in some states it's very liberal, and in some states it's very conservative what you can do gambling wise.
Mm-hmm.
But the C10 uh, makes it easier for you to do that. You know, there's I help some people do crypto gaming, crypto casinos, and they're when you go to a casino and you bet your money, it goes in, you play, you get your chip, you take your chips and you cash them out for money. So if your money increases or decreases in value and then can come back out, you're probably a casino. If you are, and then therefore an illegal gambling operation, which you do not want to be, um, a lot of problems if you're illegal gambling. But if
Mm-hmm.
you have like a tax exempt status and you are doing Monte Carlo night or whatever in your state, and there are organizations in your state that perform gaming for tax exempt entities, so the compliance is there. You know, people can pay a cover. Now, for a C10 and a C19, members, bona fide guests, have to have all of their expenses paid by the members. So you can handle this in kind of a slick way, right? All the members can have a charge account with the MC, or they can be set up on a subscription basis with the MC. And so you show up to the party with your friends, you invite women, and it's like you can just say, you know, put it on number 15, right? And then all of the expenses are paid by that member by using the charge account.
Mm-hmm.
Now, if this is like some kind of Monte Carlo night, everyone pays a cover, you invite people, you pay for them, and then you do this kind of gaming thing where you don't win your money. You can't put in 20 bucks and then win 200 bucks. You
Mm-hmm.
put in 20 bucks and you enjoy the game, and then as a result, you're entered into a raffle based on your winnings, and you take a kind of nominal prize. This is something that could be legal in the state that you're in. You can see that it would draw in many more guests
Mm.
and much more income. Now, you might have to pay taxes on the purchase on some amount of purchases, but the possibilities for making more money really just rise with this.
Well, that's interesting. I come from Oklahoma,
Mhm.
and when I was a kid, about 17, I used to call bingo.
Okay.
So bingo could absolutely be a way to to do that. You
Oh yeah.
know, I wonder. It'd be interesting if motorcycle clubs had bingo halls. Is that even
Charitable
people
bingo
still do
is
that even anymore?
You can do charitable bingo. It just depends on what the situation is in your state with the licensing. But in many states, you need a license to do those things, and you can only get one if you're a tax exempt entity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's just like another thing that's interesting that's happening. And then I wanted to just say one last thing about um, there seems to be a growing intersection with these membership organizations and fraternal organizations and crypto
Mm-hmm.
and NFTs.
Mm-hmm.
So I just want to bring that up to the MC community because I think this could be very useful for some people. So an NFT, non-fungible token, I'm sure many people have seen, and it doesn't make a ton of sense to a lot of people. It's just a silly picture of a monkey or whatever. Why is it $4 million or whatever,
I'm looking for that answer still.
Right. Okay. Um, those are essentially just trading cards.
Mhm.
Just think of them as trading cards. Those NFTs are trading cards. There are other NFTs, and people are using them as a demonstration of membership in a club. So I know a friend of mine is a works kind of a high-ranking guy at a bank. He does different kind of investments.
Mhm.
He uh, bought a membership into a club that was going to be an investment club.
Mhm.
And in order to demonstrate his membership, he purchased the NFT. So the NFT can be used almost like it can be a trading card or it can be like a membership card. And what's nice about it being a membership card is it produces income, generates income, and it also tracks membership. So this seems to be like a growing thing. Like new clubs, especially C10s, are doing a combination of 501 501c10 tax exempt status, NFTs to prove membership, and legal gaming. If you think you can connect these three things, I think you've really got you're getting ready to hit a home run in terms of fraternal organizations and these type of membership organizations.
Right.
So that is also something we can help with at Trautmann Martin Law.
That's crazy. But I still well, this is a whole nother conversation, but this NFT thing is do you see motorcycle clubs as being able to get into that?
I don't see why they wouldn't. It has like it's really just a electronic credential. It's totally possible for a new MC to do it this way, to say like, to go through your prospecting status, and when you're going to be removed from probation, then you purchase your membership NFT,
Mhm.
and then the terms of the MC might be to raise the price of the NFT to some ridiculous price so that no one will buy it,
Mhm.
and then there are other kind of more esoteric and strange things that could happen with NFTs in terms of their value increasing based upon who was the previous owner. Um, you know, are you familiar with the company REI?
Yes.
They have all of that sports equipment, mountain
Mhm.
climbing stuff.
Mhm.
They were a co-op, and they started in Seattle, Seattle in the 80s. And people who are like, you get your REI membership number, your co-op number, your co-op card. And if you're like 0 to 1,000, then that lets the REI people know you were one of the first people. You were in Seattle in the 80s. You're in. You're in the inner circle. So there's this kind of element to the NFT as a membership credential
Mhm.
that can be a part of the situation. It's not like it's like an electronic patch basically.
Okay.
You know,
Okay.
is what it is. But it helps to fund the MC.
I just don't understand, and man, there's a whole lot, and maybe you can talk about that one day. There's just so much to it. I actually know people that design NFTs, um, and they, uh, I guess they make money off of them. I wasn't sure if it was still a big thing,
Well,
because
it's changing.
yeah.
The trading card level seems to be kind of waning, but people are exploring other elements of the NFT, and one of those is membership in a club. You buy in, that funds the club, and it demonstrates that you are the member. The difficulty is it's hard to stop people from selling their interest, but depending on what kind of club you're in, this guy that I told you about, the friend of mine who entered the investment club, he said if he would have uh, been a little bit more aggressive, he would have bought 2 memberships. They were like $2,000 a piece, and keep one so that he belongs to the club, and then sell the other membership NFT, which had increased in value from 2,000 to 40. So he would have kept his NFT. The NFTs went from 2,000 to 40,000, but he wanted to remain a member of the club, so he couldn't sell his NFT. So he was telling me like, "Oh man, I would have done this differently. I would have bought 2 memberships, sold my NFT to somebody else for 40, made 38 grand, and then put that into my investment club." But instead he valued his membership in the club over the value of the NFT. So I think
That makes sense.
you can see how this actually could work in certain membership organizations. Do you value the value of the NFT more or less than you value your membership in the club? And then you can sell these. Now, this won't really work in the MC situation uh, like that, unless someone comes up with an interesting way to make that work. But a C10, it could work because a C10 doesn't have to be an MC. It just has to be a fraternal organization operating under the lodge system, meaning that there's parents and subordinates. They all are under the same rules, and it could be anything. So the people I'm working with now, theirs is more of like a Shriners thing. They have rituals, they have hoods, they have pins, they have everything you think they do. Initiation ceremonies.
Yeah, motorcycle clubs have all that.
Right, right, exactly. Motorcycle clubs have all that too. Exactly. So if MC could totally be a C10, or you can be a C10 for any purpose. Law enforcement people, firemen, or anyone with a similar calling trying to advance like a similar uh, thing,
Mm-hmm.
501c10.
Mm-hmm.
So that's it. 501c7s, 501c10s, and 501c19s for the MC. We do them all, and also federal trademark registrations for your club name and colors. Very important
So how much does
because I've
that
seen
stuff like cost?
it can get expensive, but think of it this way. We do a lot of churches, and over the course of many years, a church may spend, you know, a lot of money with us. But, some of these churches will have like big parking lots, and they'll turn those into pay for parking lots. And then the church starts to become, this is how you manage this thing. If you're going to bring this thing together, it ends up costing. The federal trademark registrations are really inexpensive. They're under $2,000. And so I think that's like the easiest one. That's the lowest hanging fruit for an MC who just wants to, just at the very least, protect your name. Federal trademark registration is a good one. The other one we can talk about sort of on an email when you contact me, but it's not tens of thousands of dollars unless you have tons of chapters. We can get this done for you for a pretty reasonable price.
Mm-hmm.
Get you started.
Okay, so how do people get in touch with you?
Nolan at troutlaw.com, the one you see here at the bottom of your screen, or you can call us. And let me get that number for you to make sure I get it right.
For those of you just tuning in, we are talking about hacks for tax exempt organizations, all of the kinds of ways you can make your motorcycle club a non-exempt organization and just really do great things to your bottom line. We have attorney Matthew Nolan from Trautmann Martin Law Company in Minnesota, and he is going to tell us how to get in touch with them if you want to get this set up.
I would say my email address, mnolan at troutlaw.com, is the best way.
Mm-hmm.
But also, you can call us at 612-644-3837.
612-644-3837. And I am rolling that as a ticker on the bottom right now. Oh, I think I am. That's really cool, man.
Were there any questions that popped up? I was focused on getting the information out. Anything else that you can think of?
No, the only question that somebody had was how much it was going to cost. You answered that, and I think you answered all the questions that I saw as you were going. People were just
Okay.
really watching and listening. I think it's just amazing. But folks need to call you and get in touch with you to discuss the elements, because there's so much to this that it really is a maturing of a club. When a club starts to get like that, they start to mature and really get good at what they're doing.
Especially if you're owning property. Yeah. If you're
Yeah,
owning property,
one of the biggest things we like to do is own our own clubhouses.
oh yeah, that's a big one. Being a tax exempt entity in that scenario is enormously better than not being one, because you don't have to pay capital gains tax on the sale of the property. In some states, you don't have to pay property tax on the property.
Wow. Right, almost like a church or something.
Yeah, exactly. Almost like a church, right? And if you luck out and a big parking lot and you're 10, now you're having a ton of income coming in, passive income that you can use for a fraternal purpose. So yeah, it's the maturing of a club. It's the increasing the longevity and protection for the organization. I know a club I did recently, they've been around since the 80s, and the treasurer called me and he said, man, if we would have done this then, we'd have, we'd really have something. So better late than never. We got it done now. And so he sees he's taking a forward looking approach as to, I want the club to continue, and this will help that, because now you have a receptacle to put your ownership interest in. So
I really appreciate you today, man. That's really amazing. Great information. We're going to be replaying this several times uh, throughout the month, so people can get this information. Make sure to share this with your club brothers, man. This right here can take your motorcycle club financially to a whole nother level. So I just think this is amazing. I appreciate you for coming on the show, man.
thanks for having me again. It was great.
Hey, we're gonna do this again. Have a great day, man. That's Matthew Nolan at Troutlaw, Nolan at troutlaw.com. You can give him probably the best way to get a hold of him is through email, Nolan, Nolan, M like Mary, Nolan at Troutlaw. And Trout is Trautlaw for my listening audience. So Nolan at troutlaw.com. Or you can call and ask for Attorney Matthew Nolan at 612-644-3837, 612-644-3837. And we appreciate you, man. You take care. Send you to the green room. And look here, man. Great stuff today. We want to bring more of this kind of stuff to you so that you guys can be doing the best you can with your motorcycle clubs out there. This is really, really, really cool stuff. This is when you get mature in your MC and you want to take your MC to the next level. So we will have another show this afternoon. We'll talk about some MC protocol, and of course we do motorcycle club news. I just want to thank you all for tuning in, and this has been an hour, so we're getting ready to get up out of here. Hey man, like, share, and subscribe. Follow this. Share this for your folks. This is not the normal gobbledygook where we talk about, oh, 1%ers did this, somebody shot this person. This right here is for your financial good and financial well-being. And I think you'd be very wise to listen to some of this information and take some action on it. I'm Black Dragon. That's my 2 cents. Love to hear your 2 cents in the comment section below. Thanks for tuning in, and get skinny.